Let's take just a second to open our service in prayer. Tom, once again, on behalf of the congregation, thank you for your presence today. We appreciate your message and look forward to the conversation that we will have. Lord, you gather us together as a congregation to consider the business of our church, to hear reports, to make decisions. We ask your presence and guidance and inspiration. Draw us together as one body in our Lord Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Amen. All right. Jerry or whoever? Yeah.
Okay. Yolanda's going to do the angel presentation.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. It certainly is nice to see all of you. We have missed our Trinity family. We've not found a church yet, but we continue to look. An update on our furniture and our move. The last word we had with our movers is that they don't know where the truck is, and they don't know where our belongings are. So we had to turn it over to God because we were driving ourselves crazy. And we could not afford the money to sue them with an attorney. We filed a claim with the government, and we just have to wait for that. But for our own peace of mind, and we know He has the plan, we've turned it over to God. Thank you for your prayers and continued prayers. Okay, last year we did something new, and this year we're going to continue. We presented some people with an angel in thanks to Trinity for everything that they've done. So, if I could have Sherry Hazard, Dan Soto, Teresa Berg, and Mike Rust, if they would come this way. Okay.
Teresa's in Hawaii.
Okay. Okay. Sherry Hazard. This year, working alone, Sherry has contacted the University of Riverside Health Center and arranged to have them bring out their mobile offices so that people in our area could see a doctor, have tests taken, get shots, and prescriptions. Because of that, Sherry has had many people become aware of Trinity Lutheran and now aware that our congregation is here in the community to assist. Sherry? Mike. All of you know Mike. Mike is here every Sunday, setting up and filming our services, but you may not know that Mike does many more things besides that. He keeps our roses in the planter in front of the sanctuary looking beautiful. He also handles the irrigation to the planter so that the flowers can continue to grow. For years, Mike has been someone we can count on to do things, and he's always helping Mary in whatever she gets into.
Thank you.
Is that better? Can you hear me? Bonnie, can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay. You can understand me? Okay, good. She's our sound person. Okay, here we go. We've had our opening prayer, and now we're going to approve the January 2024 minutes. So if you take a minute to glance over it's one page. Joe makes them very tight, so just glance and for a minute and see if you have any corrections or additions or... It's right after the agenda. It's page 2.
Third page from the cover.
Okay, any corrections, additions?
I would like to recommend that we have her put the word meeting minutes at the top.
Okay. Joe is taking our minutes for today as well. Okay, any other corrections, additions? Okay, can I have a motion accepting the 2024 minutes? Veronica made the motion. I need a second. Yolanda? Okay, the motion has been made. The minutes have been accepted as corrected. And all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion was made and carried. Thank you. Now we have the pastor's report as the next in the packet.
Yes.
So did you want to add something to that? Did you want to talk about it?
One point.
Okay, come on.
Last year I submitted a report, and it was all centered, all focused on what we hope to do together this year and in time following. This year I changed the format, so I hope you'll just simply take time to read the 2 pages of the report. It's by area of ministry, and this is a format, Tom, that we often use for pastors' reports to annual meetings. And what I wanted to focus on here is you'll see the funeral and memorial area has been a busy one, and I'm very thankful to Jerry and others for getting together a group of people who work every week on preparing for worship. So we've made great strides. As Tom well knows, it's important to have input from others as we are shaping and preparing worship rather than the pastor simply doing that. So it's been a good collaborative effort this year. And a great deal of thanks, as I mentioned here, to the various people who have done this. The other area that is a concern for me is the visitation pastoral ministry. That is on the 2nd page of the report. When Jeff talked to me about coming and being here every week so that I could be in direct contact with the congregation, we had hoped that we would have a kind of a regular process of visiting. I was able to get to hospitals and see people when they were ill or undergoing medical treatment. But the area I have a real concern about is that you who are present need to encourage those we don't see, those who are not present. If they have a concern that involves a visit from the pastor, something they would like to do, please nudge them, encourage them to contact me, and they can do so through the church office. But my cell number is at the bottom of this report on the 2nd page. So I was hoping to hear from more people this year about the need for visits, and rather than waiting for calls. I'm going to have to just go down a list of people we have not heard from. But you can help by encouraging them to please give me a call, and I'll make time available for them. So that was the main concern that I had. And please take time to read that report. That will give you a pretty good view of where my time and effort has gone during this past year.
Thank you, Pastor, very much. The next thing on the agenda is my report. However, I'm not going to add anything to it, and that may be a surprise to you because, you know me, I have the right to remain silent. I just don't have the ability. But today is different. So, committee reports are next. Endowment Board, Trinity Mission Support Team, Property Maintenance Committee report. Mary?
Good morning. The endowment fund has done really well this year. All but the last quarter, we made quite a bit of interest or earnings on our invested money. We also have been putting $10,000 into a CD, which is turning around every 3 to 4 months, and doing really well on that. The money we need for the gifts that we give every year, the ed grants and the mission grants, has all been given out. We give one time a year, we give 5% of our total amount of money. And on this sheet, you'll see who we gave it to, the students' names, and what college they're going to. They're all related to us. Most of them are grandchildren or daughter. Mary Martin is Christine's daughter. Bridget and Natalie are granddaughters of the Simmons. Willa is my granddaughter. And Brianna Freiberg is Pastor Shane's daughter. And that's who we supported. You can see for the local and area-wide, nationwide, we support the Valley Community Pantry right here on our campus. Lutheran Retreats, Camps, and Conferences, that's Glen Farms up there in Yucaipa. The Valley Restart Shelter, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, we call it NAMI. And all the money that we donate goes to the local chapter right here in our valley. And My City Youth, which has a wide variety of programs for inner city kids, and it's right here close to the depot by State and Florida, a couple blocks over. I forget which street that's on. But anyway, it's a wonderful program. The next page shows you all of our invested funds. Tammy, would you stand up? Who else is on my team? Kathy. Tammy's our treasurer. Kathy's a member at large. Danielle, stand up please. She's our secretary, and I'm the president right now. Who am I missing? Anybody? I don't see him here, so maybe that's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 of us. Therese? No, not Therese. Yeah, Debbie. Where are you, Debbie?
Debbie's over there.
Yeah, okay. Debbie, she's been on for quite a while and runs our scholarship program. So I would like to give them a round of applause. They really do a great job. Thank you, everybody that serves on that. Debbie's going off because she's been on for 4 years. You can do 2 bienniums. You know, we're always elected for 2 years. You can do 2 of them, and that's it. Then you have to go up. You'll see on the next page, Tammy made just a nice brief review of all of the amount of money in our endowment funds. So we're doing really, really well. Like I said, in fact, we gave out $8,500 this year, and we ended up with more money in earnings. So our balance went up. So that's always a good year. I'm going to move right into TMS, which is the next Trinity Mission Support. Now that's actually a committee, a subcommittee of the church council who started to help us get a minister for our ARCOM. We were trying to do outreach mission and get a minister trained in that. We finally got one, and it was Aaron, Pastor Aaron Armstrong. And then we lost her at about a year and a half because of her husband's job. But we were so excited to get her because it was what we were looking for to do with our church. And then we lost her. And we haven't really had a permanent pastor since that. But at the time, Pastor Aaron recommended we not just use the money we've been raising with all the little fundraisers, like when we go out to dinner and all that, and our yard sales and all that. All that money could go to fellowship, outreach missions, to help the church. One of the things it was made for mainly is to help our church with worship. That's our goal. That's the main goal of our church, is having a congregation that can worship. So we still have that goal. Our mission statement changed, though, at that time when Pastor Aaron was here, to the goal is Trinity Mission Support Team. They are to fundraise, to support our new pastor, support community outreach missions, and to promote fellowship for Trinity Lutheran Church. So that's what we do. It's similar to endowment in that you receive a grant from us pretty much. It's like a grant. We have a nice balance in there right now, $12,877.96. One of the things that we do is we sell things on the first Sunday, excuse me, first Sunday of every month. We sell script, and we sell Christmas cards. We have 5 cards for $1. You know, they're donated, so we always make a little profit on all those things. So we have many different ways that we raise funds. Sometimes we raise money not in large amounts, but just to support an outreach. For instance, the money that we make off of the coffee comes from South America. The coffee's made there, and it's Lutheran World Relief. They help farmers to produce their crop. They get rid of the middleman. They call them the coyotes down south. And we know that term because of moving human beings across borders, right? But it's also a term used for a middleman, any middleman who kind of takes all your money. And what was happening is the farmers were so poor they couldn't even send their kids to school. So when Lutheran World Relief went into those villages, they found that if they could get rid of the middleman, they could keep more of their profit. And Lutheran World Relief helped them set up directly with the producers that actually do the fine grinding and you know, making sure it's all sanitary and gets shipped off for sale. So it's really helped those families to thrive, and they're very thankful for Lutheran World Relief. We make 50 cents when we sell it, so we're not in it to make money, just to mostly pay for, you know, our shipping and whatnot. But it's to support. So Trinity Mission Support Team is just that. We raise money to help our own church, and we also help others, and we support other organizations like the ELCA and different places too that help others. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. The property report is next, and let's have Jack do that. And then following that, he's going to talk about the nominees for council. No, you can come right up here.
Morning. As far as the property committee report, mainly you can basically read it, much of the things that we've done over the last year. It's not everything we've done. Of course, there's been a lot of things that we've had to do. A lot of it had to do with the fire inspection. When you have a fire inspection, there's always, for some reason, we got hit pretty hard because I don't think we had a fire inspection for about 2 years, so we did quite a few things related to that. The other thing is the air conditioning and heating units in both the sanctuary and the parish hall needed quite a bit of work, but now they all seem to be working quite well. And the fact that we're not in the sanctuary saves us quite a bit, but the sanctuary heating unit has always worked quite well. It's the air conditioner that you always have a lot of trouble with. And we have an old compressor, but to replace a compressor is about $50,000. Anyway, we don't need one right now, but it does. You never know when that compressor can go out because it was put in around 2003. Everything, I'd really like to thank the folks that have donated quite a bit of work to the church, including Dan Soto, who does a lot of our plumbing, David Patrick, who's been doing some work for us especially in regard to some woodwork and so forth. Recently, I want to acknowledge the pantry for cleaning off the fence over here along with some of our folks so that we could have the neighbor to our north has put in a wrought iron fence, which looks quite nice, and I think it's going to protect us a little bit more on that north side. We've had to do quite a bit. I'm looking at the lighting situation, and we have a lot of lights that do not work. We've tried to replace a lot of them, but some of them go back a long time where they probably need an electrician to fix the problems, and electricians are not cheap. We do not probably have the money to fix some of those things, so we've deferred some of that, although the campus, I think, is lit up a little better than it was. I think Leonard did a really good job when he was here getting the parking lot situation improved, and that's still continued to be, our lighting on the parking lot is still doing quite well. I'd also like to thank the folks that sit on our committee this year, with Yolanda, Mary Rust, at times Lanny Lemke, and Charlie Larson. Also Jeff Snyder. Jeff Snyder has been helping me a lot with the property up until his untimely illness and passing. So we want to acknowledge Jeff's work because he definitely was involved in that up until that time. So that's pretty much the property report. So I guess we go into the election of new officers. I've got to get to the ballot here somewhere. This coming, very bad last page. Okay. So for the 2025, we're looking at having to replace four positions on the church council. Those staying on council would be myself, Veronica, and Sherry Hassert. Veronica Rincon and Sherry Hassert. We still have one more year on our 2-year terms. So to be elected to council, we did have 4 people willing to run for this next year. That would be Yolanda Woodruff. If you could stand, so most everybody knows everybody, but that's Yolanda. Patrice Johnson, is also going to be running. She has finished out the end of a term. Joe Neely is coming back on council and had come on because of having to replace some folks. And Danielle Rifalato is also going to be running for council. So I don't know. I guess we do have to ask for if there's any nominations from the floor for council. So seeing none, I would, now I thought last year that we were able to go ahead and approve the new council members by acclamation. And that's what we did last year. So I think if we call for a vote verbally, like all in favor say aye or whatever, then we can count the number of people that are here. If you don't wish to vote, you could raise your hand, I guess. But do I hear a motion to accept the slate of officers for the council next year? Do I hear I need a motion to accept that. I have one. Do I have a second? So all in favor of accepting the church council members for next year, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. So we are electing those folks. Now for the endowment board for next year, staying on for a second year will be Mary Rust and Tammy Beveridge, and Danielle Rifalato will be coming off because of her moving to the church council. So we are electing 3 new officers. I know Kathy Fodor is here, I think. Is Kathy? Stand up, Kathy. This is Kathy. Our other 2 folks are not here today. I know Renee Paulson, who's been on endowment before, so she knows a lot about it. Renee is ill today, but I know Mary Rust was able to get her to commit to the endowment board. And then also Teresa Berg is not here today. But do I hear any nominations from the floor for the endowment board? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to accept the nominees for the endowment board for is it a 2-year term?
Yeah, it's 2 years.
Okay. So I just need a motion to accept them. Okay, a second. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the slate for the endowment board. All in favor say aye. Aye. None opposed. We're elected. So repeat that. I'd like to recognize we need to elect a nominating committee for next year. So those that are up for the nominating committee would be Mary Rust, Joe Neely, Jerry Engelhardt, and myself, Jack Simmons. Do I hear any nominations to be on the nominating committee for next year? Seeing none, could we approve? I need a motion to approve by acclamation the nominating committee for next year. Do I hear a motion to do that, to accept that? And second that? It's been moved and seconded. We accept the nominating committee for next year. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Jack, who made the motion and second those 2, please?
Motion was made on the floor.
Okay. Can you second?
Yeah. So that pretty much takes care of the election portion of the meeting. I think so I think from here on out we go to Pacific Assembly delegates. Did anybody want to talk to that? I don't know if anybody has ever been to the Pacific Assembly. It's been quite a few years since I have, but it's quite enlightening. You know, it's different, and you get to know a lot more about what the Synod's work is and where they are going in the future. This year, the assembly is to be held on May 16th and May 17th in person at Gloria Dei Lutheran Church in Dana Point.
Yes, they again would like to come to our facility. The next one will be on this Tuesday. Now, I know we can't get you in this Tuesday. However, please come to me and I will be in contact with them as far as more of them facilitating here at our church. So we do have those two going. And lastly but not leastly, some of you have been a challenge trying to write little articles in the monthly Trinitarian. I try to think of what time of the year it is and how I can express my feelings and working with. And sometimes at certain times, some of you come to me and ask questions. And if I can help you, I'm always willing to. There are times I have to refer you back to your doctor, but if I can help in a small way, I'm more than willing to. And last but not least, if people come to me with concerns, health concerns, and they talk to me, I cannot divulge that. It must be kept in confidential, and I really, really try to do that. And I trust that you have trusted me as well. And I want to thank you again for putting me on this year as this part of the staff. Thank you so much.
Are you ready, Yolanda? Okay, here comes budget. Yeah, really.
Good morning again. We are going to go through our 2024 expenses, our budget, and what we ended up with, and then I will present the budget for 2025. So if you'll turn to the page that says Trinity Lutheran Church Revenue and Expenses 2024 Budget to Actual, plus our projected 25. 25 will be at the end. So last year, our income offerings, we projected $88,209, and we received $74,412. So we had a deficit of $13,797. Our other income, we projected $49,000. We received $18,347. And we had a deficit of $30,653. That number is so large because when we prepared the budget for 2024, we included that we would have fundraisers that would cover some of the costs that we needed to cover expenses with. But unfortunately, in 2024, we did not have any fundraisers. That's why the deficit of $30,000 exists. Total income between giving and other income was projected at $137,000, and we didn't know that was going to happen. Repairs and maintenance. You'll see the note. All repairs and maintenance will be accounted for in the rental and repair and maintenance reserve account or the repair and maintenance big five account. And there's an expense sheet that we'll go over for that category. Payroll expenses, we budgeted $29,350. We spent $28,531. so we were under budget 819. Payroll benefits, we budgeted 600. We spent 128, so we were under budget 472. So grand total expenses for last year was 137,770. We spent 130,237, so we were under budget in expenses by 7,533. Income minus expenses, we projected that we would have a small surplus of $639. In reality, we had a deficit of $37,478. And that is due to our other income and our giving. That is the activity for 2024. The next page will be the restricted rent collected and the repair and maintenance account. If you remember, I think it was last year that I had said that we were going to change the way that we recorded the rent that came in, our space rent that came in, and we were changing the way that we recorded repair and maintenance expenses, and that's because we found out we were doing it incorrectly, so we made the correction last year. So all rent that we receive goes into an account called restricted rent collected / repair and maintenance. So last year we collected in rents $22,000. We spent in repairs and maintenance $18,604.20. So at the end of 24, we have a balance plus $3,395. I've listed the expenses that we spent. We categorized them, and those are the expenses we paid for out of that account. The requirement is that any space we rent, i.e. the sanctuary or the parish hall, the Luther room, whatever it is on the campus, if we rent it, all expenses have to come out of the rent reserve. So the Lord blessed us with a positive balance in that account at the end of the year. That balance will roll over to 2025, and we'll continue to put the rent and the repairs and maintenance in that account. Now, we have an account called Restricted Assets Building and Maintenance, the Big Five account. This is the account that the congregation contributes to. It is kept separate. So, at the beginning of the year, we had $10,603.35 in there. We had donations of $5,483.60. So we had $16,086.95 to work with. We had 4 repairs that came out of this account. Normally, they would have come out of the rent collected / repair and maintenance account. But at that time, we did not have enough money in that account, so we pulled it from the Big Five account. And the congregation should be aware that's what will happen this year also. As we collect the rents and as we have repairs that are done to the property that's rented out, if we don't have enough money in that account, we will come to the Big Five account and pull the repair from there. So our ending balance for 24 in that account is $13,286.80. Any questions on those 2 accounts? I know it's a bit confusing at times. Okay. The budget for 2025. Yeah, does everybody have one of these sheets? It got missed in the entire folder, so it was handed out separately. Yeah. Talking about the budget, 2025. Everybody have that? Okay. The 2025 budget in detail is on the sheets that have the 2024 projected versus actual. If you go to the far right, you'll see the projected budget in detail as to what each category is and what's in that category. This, I'm just going to summarize what the 2025 budget will be if passed. So the proposed budget is part of that packet that I just mentioned, and I'm going to cover the main budget categories and provide reasons for the adjustments that have been done. We said that total offering will be $62,030. Now this is based on the actual offerings that we've received from last year. Total other income will be $21,950. This is based on TMS giving and bequests, because remember, the rent collected goes into that special account. Total income projected for 25 is $83,780. Your finance committee worked very hard, very hard to come up with realistic numbers that we could present to the congregation that would present the true figures of what's happening with our church. And I think that if you look at 24, in reality, we were negative. And for the last 3 years, we've kind of been decreasing as we go along. And so this year, we didn't put fundraisers in to try and cover money that we needed to operate on. We said we're going to give the congregation a true picture without fundraisers so that they can see and realize what's happening to the church. So expenses for 2025. General expenses are slightly reduced from last year. Ministry expenses are slightly increased from last year, and that's because the supply pastor fees increased. Benevolence to ELCA was reduced due to other increased costs. Administrative expenses are slightly increased from last year. Cost of utilities and supplies are higher, and that's the reason why. Auto expense is slightly higher. Our pastor is intending to do more visitation visits. So as he said, please remember, if you know someone that needs a visit, needs prayer, you could let him know, and if you don't want to do that, then go to the person that's ill or needs the prayer and ask them, do they have the permission to go to the pastor and ask for prayer or ask for a visitation? We didn't do enough of this last year, and this is extremely important. Our congregation needs to know that Pastor Rex is here for us, whatever it is, prayer, whatever it is. He's here for that purpose, along with giving us the message on Sunday. Insurance is slightly increased, and that's because of the fees for financing the policy. We don't know if we're going to have an increase in insurance. I tried to call them, but they didn't know, so we don't know. Possibly we might have an increase. We just don't know. Repair and maintenance that work should be now offset by the reserve space rental and repair account. And like I said before, if we have expenses that can't be covered by that account, then we will go to our repair and maintenance Big 5 account. Payroll expenses are slightly increased, and that's due to payroll taxes. Payroll benefits are slightly decreased. So we are projecting that our total expenses for 25 will be $130,785. Our total income is projected at $83,780. That leaves us a deficit of $47,005. It's a large number, and it's a realistic number because we did not, as I said before, put any kind of fundraisers in there to try and compensate for that. Yes, we have fundraisers with TMS, but that doesn't cover our expenses here. TMS does give us, when we ask for things, and they have it, they will give us small amounts of money to help the congregation. But they cannot cover everything that is needed by the congregation. So I ask you to diligently pray on your giving and your donating of time. And one of the reasons for our congregational meeting, and one of the reasons that Pastor Tom here, is to talk about the direction that the church might possibly be going in. $47,000 deficit is a huge, huge number. And we need to pray and ask God for guidance in what we're going to do with Trinity. I need to have a motion to accept the budget for 2025. A second? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? The budget will pass as presented. Thank you. Oh, one thing. I want to thank the Finance Committee for all their time and their hard work to come up with a budget that we could present to you that would be realistic and truthful.
They worked so hard on this budget that I commend them all on that committee. Okay, Pastor Tom, I think you're up. If you have any questions.
Pastor Tom, if everybody can hear you from there, would you please talk to us from
Where?
rather than the microphone?
Yeah, if you can hear me, but I can tail off sometimes.
Now, we're filming it for all those people who couldn't make
Yeah,
it
Buddy
today.
needs to speak from up there so that they can.
We need him up there, please, and then we'll bring the microphone to you if you have a question.
Will I be able to hear this on your video?
Yeah.
Okay, then
All right, Pastor Tom is here. He'll answer questions, any question you may have. So.
Good morning again. We are still morning, right? Oh no, it's afternoon. Good afternoon. Okay, well hopefully I won't be saying good evening. I actually have 2 more stops today, so I'm good on time at the moment, but I do have 2 more stops. Before we get into some questions and answers, just a couple of things of what I do. I'm your director for evangelical mission. What does that mean? My position in the Synod office is an assistant to the bishop, and I focus on missional activity of the church. Are you able to hear me okay? Okay. If you can't hear me raise, I'll try to change the projection of my voice into the microphone. Okay? I'm involved from everything from new starts. Yes, we are starting new churches. And then on the other end of the spectrum is holy closures. Both of those directions are blessings in many ways. They are mixed with emotions on both sides, but they're also a time when we recognize how God is active in our lives. You all remember this. Take your 2 hands, if you would. I'm assuming you remember this as a child growing up, and interlock your fingers. Okay, all right. And it goes, here is the church, here is the steeple, open the door, and here are the people, right? Okay, and we learn from that the church is what? The people. It is not the building, okay? It is the people. And so it is a living, breathing organism, okay? It's not a fixed piece. There's a cycle of life in this, okay? And we all travel that cycle of life as individuals, and then in the communities in which we participate and live and work and play, all right? So I'm involved in the people side, okay? The side piece is the building stuff, okay? So that's what I do. I work with churches that are in redevelopment. I work with churches who are, hence I was here when Pastor Aaron was here. And I work with churches who are starting off. Our Palm Springs, we opened a new church 5 years ago in Palm Springs. We never had a ministry in Palm Springs, believe it or not. And we started one there right about a year before COVID hit. And you would think, oh my goodness, disaster. Well, no, they are a self-supporting ministry now. They are on their own and doing well. They worship about, it depends, 6 months out of the year they worship about 70, and another 6 months out of the year they worship 120, 125. And of course that's because of the snowbirds, okay, that come in to the Palm Springs, Palm Desert area for 6 months out of the year and then return home the other 6 months out of the year. So that's one of the pieces for them. So they're doing well, and Pastor Tim Edmondson is the pastor there. We've also just launched a new ministry start in January down in El Cajon in the San Diego area. It is going to be, the pastor there will be a young man who is doing his fourth-year internship and beginning to develop this new ministry. They are going to be based at St. John Lutheran Church in El Cajon. The young man is a Palestinian Christian. He will be ministering to an Arab community. The city of El Cajon has 20,000 Arabs in it. So we're launching that ministry there in partnership with the ELCA to see how we can get traction on that. So those are fun things. In between that, we've also have a new Indonesian ministry that's worshiping at the Lutheran Church in San Bernardino, and so we do those things. And then on the other side, we have congregations that are under synodical administration and synodical preservation, which is regarding the sheet that I handed out to you. I want you to take a deep breath before you read through that sheet, okay? Don't pass out on us, okay? Because it is a process, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. After I field some of your questions that you might have, most notably, you just approved a budget with a $47,000 deficit. And Yolanda, I'm going to put you on the spot here. How much cash do you have on hand right now in the funds that go to your regular budget, not endowment funds?
We have roughly 5,000 in the general account, and we have 19,000 in the revolving account.
So you have 5,000 in the general account, 19,000 in the revolving account, is what you said. So that's about $24,000, and you have a budget of deficit of $47,000. So unless some turnaround happens, you're not going to make it through the year in terms of cash. And I'm talking calendar year. You're probably only going probably 6 months at tops, maybe 4. It just depends where the expenses come in and how the income flows. So what happens in that case? I met with your council, it's been about 2 months ago now. When I met with the council, Bishop Dave has been out here as well and met with the council. And the first question I was asked, they had a council well prepared, had a wonderful sheet of questions. The first question at the top of that sheet is, what happens if we go bankrupt? And of course, we all know that's what happens when you run out of cash. And so My response to the council was, we're not going to let you go bankrupt. Okay? We're not going to let you go bankrupt. That's where we come along with synodical administration and synodical preservation. Now, we have an interesting polity as Lutherans. We're not unique, because there are other churches that have this polity too, but we kind of live with one foot in one world and one foot in the other world. What I mean by that is, you own your property. Okay, so in the Methodist tradition, the property is essentially owned by the district. Yep, the denomination owns it. So it's, the district oversees that. Same is true, of course, in Catholic circles. Same is true in Episcopalians. I think it's kind of fuzzy with them. But here, you own your property. However, one of the responsibilities of the synod is to make sure that your asset is preserved. That your asset does not go into receivership in some form or fashion. We do that so that we honor the folks who have been a part of a ministry from the beginning to the end. And so I'm going to walk you through this sheet that I handed out, and I've got them in numerical order, but I'm going to reverse that order when I talk to you. The sheet says on the top, what is synodical preservation and synodical administration. I'm going to start with administration, which is 13.25 in the Synod Constitution. You have a church constitution, there's a Synod constitution, and then there's a church-wide constitution. So there's 3 constitutions that basically operate and give us guidance of how we function as a church body that we know as the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. All those constitutions work in concert with each other. A lot of autonomy with the congregation and how it operates and how it goes until it runs into headwinds that are caused by various different reasons. So 13.25 is an administration, and that's where a congregation can request administration, where we would appoint a couple of trustees, 3 trustees and myself, to begin to work with your council to operate the congregation. At that time, you would be under the oversight of the Synod Council, which also is 60% lay people, 40% rostered leaders. Okay? So I can't stress that enough, because a lot of people think we're a pastor-driven church. Nope, we're a lay-driven church, but there is a partnership that takes place. What happens with administration? We have been in administration with a congregation in Whittier they're actually on their second go-round of administration. And we have been in that place for over 10 years. But the congregation itself was tired. They couldn't field enough people to operate legally in the state of California. Now, you just elected a council, okay? Your issue isn't you don't have people. Your issue is going to be more financial. And so what we do when we have put this group together is we come alongside of you to help you handle your financial situation. And if it comes to the point that the synod begins to put money into the church to keep it going, then we move into what's called synodical preservation. That's the bigger one, 13.24, that is there. And this is something that isn't asked, it just happens by the Synod Council. And it is usually one of those 6 or 5 areas that are listed there by alphabet, A, B, C, D, E. Okay? Knowing that if we have to step in a synodical preservation way, and we currently have 2 ministries on synodical preservation, Whittier, who I just talked about having 10 plus years on administration, crossed into synodical preservation in December. Okay? Another congregation, matching what you have now here in Hemet, financial challenges, they moved into synodical preservation in December as well. Now, the difference between preservation and administration is more of a joint piece together. Preservation, and I think the two words are mixed, but don't mind me. So I tend to cross them up. Preservation, and we're not here to preserve everything forever, okay? It's really starting to wind down the ministry itself. And our goal is to create a soft landing. Now, we have had various things happen through the years in our synod as well as other synods of the church. It has happened where a congregation, well, somebody from the congregation will walk into the synod office and they will say, here's the keys. And you got to react, you know? And you got to put a team together in the synod council in that regard. So that would qualify under B. The congregation has abandoned its property. All right? A is the congregation has disbanded, ceased worship, or otherwise ceased to exist as a congregation. So neither one of those, A or B, don't apply. Okay? C, the remaining members of the congregation decide that it is no longer possible to function as a congregation, or that they are unable to provide required governance. You have to operate in accordance to the state of California, in this case, rules and laws, which means you have to field a president, you have to field a treasurer, and you have to field a secretary. And those go on to the statement of information that you file. Most congregations every year. At the very least, it has to be done every 2 years with the state of California. D, the Synod Council determines that the membership of a congregation has become so scattered and so diminished in numbers that it cannot provide required governance, or that it has become impractical for the congregation to fulfill the purposes for which it was organized. It's a much more general statement there. You are probably close to that D piece, simply because of finances, okay? And then E, the Synod Council determines that it is necessary for this synod to protect and preserve the congregation's property from waste and deterioration. And that is probably close to where you are too. You've been attempting to sell your building and your property here for a few years now. How many of you think it's rare that a church gets sold? That it just doesn't happen?
Say it again.
How many of you think that you rarely ever see churches get sold? Okay. I'm going to give you a statistic.
10 years ago, I would have said.
Yeah. Well, in the time that I served at St. Paul in Fullerton, there was a realtor who would send me every quarter the churches on the market in Orange County. There was never less than 60 churches on the market at any one time. The thing is you don't know that because you don't put a for sale sign up like you would do your house. Okay? So there's always that piece that is happening in some form or fashion. As we built churches in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, this church was in the 50s, 60s. What? 1966? Okay, you were right in the heart of all those Lutherans moving out from the Midwest, right? And that's kind of the typical piece for us as a synod. And we brought our Midwestern Lutheran roots out here to California. Many were transferring out here for jobs in the industry of defense or other corporations or companies. And one of the first things people were told when they showed up at the door where they'd been recruited by a company or corporation to work for them, they were told to go find a house and go find a church. That doesn't happen anymore. And, it was, how I talked about blessings and curses kind of going hand in hand? One of the blessings is we didn't have to do much to invite people into church. They just showed up at the front door, okay? And there was a lot of loyalty to denominations in the mainline churches. So if I was a Lutheran, I would go to a Lutheran church. Break that out to the different stripes of Lutherans. After 1986 and 87, when we became the ELCA, you had ALC, LCA, AELC joined together, and then you had the Missouri Synod, and you still have Wisconsin Synod as well. Okay, those are the three churches primarily in Southern California now, although after 2009 there was also NALC, National Association of Lutheran Churches. That was a breakoff from the ELCA. And there's also, the other one is escaping me at the moment, but there was a second one as a result of conversations in 2009. So the reality is the shifting sands of church are always there. We think about all of our generations passing through the same church. I get married in church, I raise a family in church, children are baptized in church, they're confirmed at the same church, but we've become much more mobile as a society and as a culture. That's number one. Used to be if I had an aunt or an uncle or a brother or a sister who had a birthday and they lived in Las Vegas, I'd send a card, maybe some flowers, a gift, whatever the case is. Now it's, let's go spend a weekend in Las Vegas. And that impacts church attendance. Okay? It used to be that people attended their church 3 to 4 times a month on any given month. Many of you are still in that place today because you're here on a regular basis. But much of your children or that are not here. They've moved on. They've moved out of the community. Whatever it is, no judgment. We only need to look at our roots in Europe. Sweden, Norway, Germany, where there are a lot of great, big, beautiful church buildings, but they are more museums than they are churches. Okay? Because the people have a life cycle. And if you're fortunate enough to maintain that life cycle through a handful of generations, that's great. But on the other side, the congregation I served in Columbus, Ohio, just recently celebrated their 140th year. In our tradition, that's much more prevalent in the Midwest. In our area of Southern California, there are churches who have 100 years, 120 years. Very few and far between. For us as get into the downtown Los Angeles area and places like that. So there is a life cycle. So back to the synodical preservation. If we have to act in a synodically preserved way, you as a congregation will have the opportunity to appeal that. It's not the final say. And that appeal happens publicly at the next Synod Assembly. We've never reached that point. We came close a few years ago with one that thought that was going to appeal publicly, and then they didn't show. And it was one that we ended up in a very lengthy lawsuit in. Because, again, our objective is to preserve the assets of the ministry to stay in the Lutheran family. And that's what we work to do. Now that may put a whole bunch of questions in your mind. What does that mean for us? I said we wouldn't let you go bankrupt. That means that we will come alongside of you and help you pay your bills, and help you through your compensation. Anything that we put into the ministry there's no interest. It's not a loan. Okay. It's a temporary grant, is what you say. Because if the time comes that we need to liquidate the property, and I know that you're in sale here already, then off the top of the sale, the synod would be reimbursed for the funds that they have put into the church to keep it going for the time period that we're here. I don't see this as adversarial. I see this as a partnership. That's why I always like to have on the administration teams that I work with and the preservation teams to have representation of the church who have a voice but no vote with the trustees, but to help guide us, because you have the best knowledge of the local context of your ministry. Okay? And we want to honor that for as long as we possibly can while we work for other things. Probably, if you were at a Synod Assembly a few years ago, Hope Riverside, we were there. They couldn't afford a full-time pastor. They had an interim pastor. Eventually, they had an interim part-time deacon, word and service person serving the congregation. And Pastor Terry Tooby Allen and I were working with them on in our two areas of you can say specialties. I in the missional side, and Pastor Terry in fulfilling the pulpit side. And the congregation was still worshiping about 30, 35 a Sunday. The average age in the congregation was, I say 70 to 75. They would tell me 80 or 85. Okay? Isn't it always better to underestimate, you know? When someone asks me, how old do you think I am? Oh, you're 29. You know? So anyway, they looked at me as we walked them down two different paths. They said, Pastor Tom, we're tired. We can't do it anymore. And so we worked with them in creating and developing a plan so that they would have that soft landing. And that would be our goal here in the coming months, should we need to cross that threshold. What does that mean? They put their property up for sale. Riverside, this is Hope Riverside in Palm Desert. If you look them up now, they're probably not going to be anywhere. But they're off of Arlington. They were off of Arlington Avenue in Riverside. And their property sold for their asking price, and it sold, I don't mean to say this in a way that's judgmental to you, because these things are all unique. It sold in 5 months for the asking price of $3 million. And it was bought by the Riverside Unified School District. It sat right across the street from one of their elementary schools. They already were sharing the parking lot there for major events at the school and all of those things that would take place. So it kind of worked in that direction and funneled in that direction, and it happened. So what happened to the $3 million? They had a loan on the property that had to be paid off. They had a couple other encumbrances in the property that had to be paid off. And then we as a synod were in there for some money. So when it all came push to shove, there was still about $2.6 million or $2.5 million left, because there are also realtor fees and all those things that you pay when you sell things, just like you do your house. And so we sat with the congregation. We have two formulas in the synod that we use. One formula assumes that there is enough of a nucleus left in the congregation to be able to have input on how those assets will be dispersed. Okay? 10% off the top goes to the ELCA. I don't know the history of this property completely. I do not think this was property that was given to you but we have many properties in the church that were given by the Lutheran Church, whatever their predecessor bodies were. So we remember the ELCA with 10% of the sale. And then there's a 20% that goes to the synod because we're losing mission support, or we have not had much mission support from that congregation for a long time. And it is also utilized for new initiatives in the synod. Finally, the last 70% is decided in partnership with the people. And you would decide, and I have never had a synod council say no. Okay? So as long as you keep it reasonable, we will do what the wishes of the people are with that 70%. Hope Riverside had some nonprofits that they were important to them. They had a food pantry with Feeding America. They had they worked closely with Central City Lutheran Mission. There were a couple other things that a home in the area of the church that was for battered and abused women and children. And so they chose a percentage of their 70% to go in that direction. They also gave a portion of that money to Eden Lutheran in Riverside, one of our TLC churches there, and also to Trinity Lutheran in Riverside. And they gave the lion's share of that 70%. They gave to the New Start in Palm Springs to give life to a new ministry to go, and it has helped them to get off of and to become more self-supporting in a very short period of time. So that's what happens. What happens if there are no people left, or very few? Then we put the bulk of the money into a mission fund in the synod, which is utilized to work with congregations that are going through preservation and all of that, but also for new starts and new ministries. It helps to fund those opportunities as well. So that 70% would be earmarked. Really, we call it legacy giving, but legacy is a word that some people love and some people don't love. Okay? But that's how we would utilize those funds to go forward. We prefer the way we prefer the way of the Hope Riverside. You still have, if I look out here, you still have a nucleus of folks to work with, to have that opportunity to have partnership in how those funds would be doing. We have had church, not in my tenure in the synod office, but we did have a church that just went out and sold their property on their own, and there were 5 households left in the church, and they were going to divide that money up among the remaining 5 households and do it. There's only a problem with that, and that is you and I are not nonprofits. We're for-profits. And as we got word of it, wind of it, we told them, well, you can do it, but you will probably spend some time in jail. You just don't want to run afoul with the government, because once they focus on you, it can get nasty. And then you end up burning all your money on legal fees. And so it's much more healthy. Is that a word? More healthy? to be proactive in seeding mission than it is to try to take care of ourselves. Okay, I've talked enough. Questions?
Two questions.
Yes.
Under synodical administration, if I understand correctly what you said, the council would kind of make a decision and take it to the congregation, and the congregation would vote yea or nay to do synodical administration. Is that correct?
There is no specific path defined by Constitution, but that would be my preferred path of doing it. Because your council could do it, but you really need to talk to the congregation. The congregation has to be on board.
Yeah, that's why I said the congregation would take it to the congregation and the congregation would vote on that. Okay, so if Trinity congregation decided to do synodical administration, what involvement does the council have?
We would appoint some trustees that would be from outside of the ministry, okay? Usually a couple rostered leaders and a couple lay people. But we would work in partnership with your council, or those that wanted to be a part of the administration process, to help us understand the ministry, to help make recommendations for us so that we could make those decisions. I even involve congregations, people that are represented there in some votes in that regard. But ultimate power comes to the Synod Council. It's the Synod Council and the trustees that they've appointed to. Now, that being said, if you vote to come on synodical administration, you can also vote to go off of synodical administration.
Does that also mean that if the Board of Trustees for synodical administration, they would have the final say on, let's say, the finances, who gets paid monthly, who doesn't get paid monthly, how we make decisions about repairs and maintenance, those kind of things?
Certainly we want the input of them, but that's what we need help with. Okay, so there is input. But ultimately the Board of Trustees has to make that decision because it involves, 99.9% involves Synod money as well. So, looking at your numbers, you're going to be running about a $4,000 deficit a month. You've got about $24,000 left, assuming everything stays the same. 6 months, you're going to be out of money. That means the Synod now will be taking over those obligations, if not a little bit before that, so that you don't run your bank accounts down to zero. And we have one congregation where we're infusing $3,000 a month on right now, just so they can meet their monthly obligations, and they know that they're moving into synodical preservation.
One last question.
Mm-hmm.
If Trinity went under synodical administration, and we have the Board of Trustees, our property is up for sale right now. If we're in synodical administration and we sell the property, what happens?
Well, there's a couple paths that can go. The cleanest path would be, that we work together in concert to figure out how that's going to do, and we can kick those formulas into place. Okay, so if you say, I'm trying to create a scenario in my head. Let's say you say, okay, we now have $1 million in the bank. We want to go relocate. We want to go start a new church somewhere. That will involve conversations with the Synod and the Synod Council. And the reason being is, first of all, you can't relocate without a vote of the Synod Council to approve you to relocate. Okay, you can't just up and move, because we don't want congregations to move right next door to other congregations and become competing entities in terms of ministry and mission. Okay, so that by Constitution requires a vote of the Synod Council to support any move. And it's happened where there have been relocations, but not usually under administration or preservation. Okay?
So if we were under synodical administration, we sold the property, and let's say that half the congregation or 3/4 of the congregation wants to continue as Trinity, we then would have to get the Senate's approval as to what location we would go to. But it would be okay for us to remain Trinity and
the corporation can stay open, and that the best thing if you just walked in the door to us and said, because we know you're challenged with people and dollars. Everybody who's here is incredibly important, okay? And so if you just kind of walked into the Synod office and say, we want to move to pick whatever spot in Hemet you want to move to, you would need to require that. You would need to have the vote of the Synod Council to approve that move. If we are working together going into that vote, chances are it's going to be much more affirmed rather than facing a lot of tough questions. Okay? It's because we have seen, it's too common that when we move, things don't change. And every time you move, I'm going to use a non-Lutheran example. Eastside Christian in Fullerton was located right next to the university. Oh my goodness, it's still in one piece. Yeah, one of the angels got hooked on my rope. They moved, and they moved 5 miles south into Anaheim. But that doesn't sound like a lot, because we in California drive all the time. But when you move 5 miles in one direction, for somebody that was already coming to the congregation from 5 miles in the other direction, you've now made it a 10-mile drive. And so you will have natural attrition that happens when people move.
Some people won't make that extra.
They won't make that extra. So generally speaking, if you have 100 people and you move 5 to 10 miles away, you may retain 75 or 80. That's a typical pattern. You could retain all 100, but that's rare.
Thank you.
Yes?
What is it? What does it cost for the people from the Synod to work with us?
No cost.
No cost.
No cost. Nope. You already support the Synod through your offerings and your benevolences.
So there's not even mileage or anything?
Nope. I get reimbursed mileage from the Synod. So I don't get reimbursed mileage from here. There are times we say tongue-in-cheek, if we could only invoice, it would be nice, it would help our budget out, but we don't do that.
It's like my understanding, like when we had my understanding when we had a conversation with the bishop, that there's a certain time frame. You can't just say, oh, we're under synodical. We have to vote as a congregation to go under synodical administration. So after you vote on it, then you have to be accepted by the Synod to go under synodical administration. Is that correct?
The Synod Council would agree to going under synodical administration, but it would take effect immediately in an administration piece. Preservation takes a Synod Council decision to make, and so that can only happen when they meet, and they meet about 4 times a year.
So how often do the trustees meet in order to say that, yes, we accept you to administration?
That wouldn't take long. The executive committee of Synod Council, we can take it to them, and they would have a special meeting and a vote. We don't walk in and say, hey, this congregation wants to go under synodical administration, or we think this congregation should go under synodical administration, and they're kind of on the fence on it. Are you ready to support that if we do? They've never said no, because we're usually at a point where something has to happen. Okay, there has to be movement in some sort of time. Think of it in terms of a marriage. I remember when I served in a consultation discipline area with the church. I'm not going to get into any details, but we had a clergy couple. okay, who was having challenges in their relationship, okay? And this had extended, they had left the synod, they had gone to a different synod, and the synod was looking for our bishop here to give them approval to go forward and receive calls there, and our bishop wouldn't do it. And then he put me on the task to talk with them and meet them, because their relationship was just kind of stalled out. They weren't working towards reconciliation, and they weren't working towards dissolution. Well, we fall, as roster leaders, we fall under a document called Expectations for Clergy and Roster Leaders. And in that document, it assumes that you're moving for reconciliation or you're moving for dissolution. You can't stay in the middle and stay stuck forever. Okay? And so that's what was brought to it. That's a weird example, but it is a marriage here, and you can't just stay on forever. The reason why Whittier went as long as it did is because the Presbyterian Church sold their property, moved onto the campus of Salem. They provide the pastor. They provide, and they all worship together. And now there's only 5 people left at Salem. And the Presbyterians have about 20. We needed to act in a preserved way so that there are no assumptions made by the Presbyterians that they get the assets. Because that doesn't work that way. Again, we have a responsibility to protect the ministries and the congregations that we oversee.
The thing is, too, is like if we opt to go with administration, that's our decision. But if for some reason the Synod thinks that we should go under preservation, that's their decision.
Yes, but you can appeal it. And in the meantime, you operate under preservation until that appeal is heard. Again, it's to protect the congregation from bad actors. We have had, in our city, we have had a congregation struggling, and all of a sudden somebody comes in. There are actually people out there that look for these scenarios, okay? And in this particular case in La Mirada, they had a great young family come in, great, vibrant young family, and they were all excited about the young family. Everybody was excited. They got on council. They became members of the congregation. They made up, about 30% of the vote because they brought relatives. And the next thing you know, the congregation was walking down the path where they were going to lose everything. And we...
I lost the last part, which...
They were moving in a direction where they were going to lose everything because the people were bad actors, and we want to be careful.
They're motives.
They're people who prey on that type of thing. Now those are extreme cases, okay? But we want to put things in place to prevent that from happening. Yes.
My question is, if we were to sell a church and we're under this procedure, and we decided that we wanted to turn around and rent from the people that purchase our church, like we already have another congregation that does this, we're in the same location, so there's no competing interests, would we be able to keep any of the money from the sale of that church to sustain us financially?
I would say you would. If you have myself and Bishop Dave advocating for you, yes. Okay? We would come to some agreement on how that would work. We are not interested in taking your money. We're just not interested in doing that. We're not interested in taking your money. We're not interested in taking your property. But we do have a process that brings somewhat of order. I'm not going to say that there aren't going to be people or individuals who disagree with that, because we live in a culture where there is that freedom to disagree and agree in that regard. So we would work with you. Yes?
What's the difference between the administration and the preservation again?
Administration is working cooperatively together in the Synod You know, your assets, or your liquid assets in particular, you're still managing those, you're taking care of those. But when you run out, there has to be a partner that's going to come along beside you to infuse you with some cash so that you can meet those monthly obligations. That's administration, but it begins to cross into preservation. And then preservation is a synodical council decision. And once that's in place, you as a congregation can say, wait a minute, we're a vibrant congregation. We can handle all these things ourselves. And you can appeal that to the Synod Assembly. We've never gone that far with that. I can't predict how that would go, but it's a presentation to the Synod Assembly, and the delegates of the Synod Assembly then make a decision. And believe me, the larger the circle gets, the more contentious it becomes. That's just the nature of things.
My question is a little bit different. The fact that we had interest in our church by another church at this point in time, are they truly interested? Do we have a time schedule that that would help us with everything? I know they're interested, they've come and looked. What is the time schedule for them to actually make a commitment to us?
I can't respond to that, so.
That's really more of a question for the brochures, if we can put, a deadline so that they're not sitting on the fence so long. Good question. I have a question about, I've heard this 3 times now, so I've kind of gotten to know, the 10% and the 20% and the 70. The 70 is for us. If it sells, at least, even if we're under synodical administration, we would choose where that money, we would help choose where that money would go. And if we wanted to stay Trinity, they would work with us. It probably would help us stay Trinity and use that money from the sale of our property to rent or, to be able to finance staying Trinity. Staying Trinity means we need to keep working, doing, some of us double duty on all our jobs because we don't have enough people anymore to do all the work. The other opportunity would be, of course, to merge, join in with the other ELCA church here in town, Spirit of Joy. If we were to do that, we'd still have the 70% to help. That would go with us, right? Or would
we would. That 70% would go, and I would imagine. I can't speak for an entire city council, but I would say it would go with you, and in fact, maybe even all of it in that regard, because you're working to strengthen in that.
And as long as we go to one or the other, if we say Trinity, we get to keep the endowment fund. If we merge with Spirit of Joy, we get to keep the endowment fund. We've already been over that many times with the bishop. And he assured us we would. So that's just a little bit, I kind of wanted to share that, but also, I like the way that we would still get to choose where the money goes if we...
There's no reason why the endowment fund wouldn't travel if you do a formal coming together with Spirit of Joy, okay? That it could travel with you, and you would put an endowment committee together and honor that endowment as it's intended to be utilized and used. However, if you don't formally merge and go in that direction, you may just walk over there, then the bishop, I believe, has said, we would house that for you at the synod office, and then your folks could still be engaged in determining its disbursements. You just become a committee for that fund at the synod council level, or at the synod office level. So either way, that fund remains intact and utilized for its intended purposes.
Yes, I understand. If we completely close down and there were nobody here to shut the lights off, that money would go to the Synod, of course, but by law, they still would have to spend that money on missions and ed grants, just like we do. That's designated for that. They can't change that either.
Yeah, we have designated funds. We have designated funds at the Synod level.
I know, that way. Yeah, a lot of different ones. Any other questions?
If we go under synodical administration, what happens to our staff?
You would operate as you normally operate. There would be no reason unless the functions decrease. And when you talk about staff, you're talking about your office administrator person.
Yes.
And what other staff do you have?
Yes.
What do you have? Other staff?
Custodians.
Okay. Yeah. You still need to maintain and upkeep the property. So yeah, that would be happening. You're still just going to keep, burning through cash. And so we would maintain that going in because you need to keep the property upkept. And you're still going to be a worshiping community, so the office staff would be needed to help that happen. Plus, you want a person who's here on the campus.
And if we didn't have one to pay that, the
Synod then comes alongside and pays that. Yeah, it's pretty amazing though how fast that adds up.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We have a renter that is a community pantry.
Mm-hmm.
It's in Bold Valley and stuff like that. I'll think of it. Okay, we have a renter, the community pantry that's back there. Now that, how does that play into all of this as far as?
Well, the property is the property. We wouldn't dismiss the renter if we were under preservation as long as it's operable. We need to begin talking about what is the long-term ramifications of that, because we're not interested in keeping the property just to keep the property ongoing. Our philosophy in our Synod is we look to liquidate that property, because that money can be utilized in other places. So then we would need to work with the pantry and try to find a solution or a resolution to that, should that come. Trinity, Hope in Riverside had a pantry. They worked with Feeding America. That pantry relocated to Trinity Lutheran Church across town, and the funds to transfer all the refrigerators and all the things that were needed were handled by the administration team from funds that Hope had or from Synod funds, and then the Synod was reimbursed for that if there were Synod funds involved with it.
That brings up another question. The community pantry presently is not paying rent. It is Trinity's mission right now. We are helping them because they're in financial crisis. They're not able to pay rent. So we've made some arrangements with them that they keep part of the property clean and picked up and that kind of thing. So we're looking at the pantry as Trinity's mission right now. So if we went under synodical administration and the Senate knows that they're on the property but they're not paying rent, that's an agreement that Trinity has with them. What effect does that have with the Senate? What would the Senate say about that?
We would try to honor all of the agreements that you have in place. Okay? We can't say never, never, never. We can't say, but we would do our best to honor all those things in place for as long as it's feasible for the ministry as you're progressing forward.
Thank you.
Sure. Yep. This is a partnership.
When do we have to make a decision?
You guys make a decision when you make a decision. but you run out of money, then we'll kick in right to synodical preservation. There will be no administration. So, because we're going to have to we said we wouldn't let you go bankrupt, we will start infusing cash into the ministry.
It would become preservation then?
Yes. So, I always see a lot of emotions with this, and that's okay. That's expected because you're grieving, okay? And you're grieving, and grief is not a bad thing. We do it all the time, and we don't realize it, but whenever something changes in life circumstances, we grieve. We lose a job, we change jobs, whatever it is, we move houses, whatever, there's a sense of grief that sets in. And the first couple of stages of those are denial and anger, right? So, and it's not like this linear thing that you do this, and then you move to this, and then you move to this, and then you move to this. It moves back and forth, and when I work with couples or families who experience loss of life, I know it takes at least a year to get through that grieving, because we've built our lives around special events, Christmases, birthdays, anniversaries. And the same is true for the church. Again, it's not the building, it's the people. Okay? And you're going to be traveling that, and you're all going to travel it at a different pace, at a different speed, at a different level. Okay? So we're here to help with that. I'm not going to stand here and say we're never going to disagree. Okay? Sometimes we have to make a decision that it doesn't happen often, folks aren't going to agree with, because we're looking at the big picture, not the emotional stuff that we have right at the moment. And so that's why I say this is a process to help create a soft landing for you as a ministry. Now you can find ways to survive, you can find ways to survive, find ways to do things, but inevitably you're kicking the can down the road. And so the sooner you begin having conversations and we begin to develop some sort of partnership, the softer the landing will be for you, because we will be in concert with one another as we go forward. And I can tell you that I've got 3 years left. So you've got me for 3 years to walk with you. That's okay. That's what happens. Holy Spirit.
If God blesses us and we sell the property before we decide one or the other, administration or preservation, then we as Trinity get to make all the decisions on what we're doing with our money, if we're going to remain Trinity, where we go, etc. Is that correct?
Yes, but if you're relocating location, then that's a city council. Okay? Yeah. So yeah, there is that piece.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that, I'm not on the council, but I sit on the council as an outsider, as a guest, and as a past president. So I just sit there and I give ideas and I listen, and so that's why I've gone over this quite a bit, and that's why I've heard it. And I can see that the council's been trying to be really proactive, not wait till it's too late, not wait till we're going bankrupt. Unfortunately, the way that money looks right now, we don't really have a lot of time left. We're that far in debt. So last year we were already, but we thought that there would be more, people that would want to run bingo and all these different fundraisers, and that didn't happen. I can't really see that happening. Most of us are getting older and we're getting tired, and and a lot of us are doing 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 jobs already around here because there just aren't enough people to do everything. So it's really hard for me to envision myself, to envision us starting over, even if we had a lot of money. And you can't pay people to come. You can pay for a minister, so then they might come. But it's hard for me to envision us, the few of us that there are, we know each other right now, to run a Trinity, even with money. You know, and like he was saying, some churches end up with all the money, but nobody to run it anyway, and they still go under preservation. So that was another scenario we had shared before, and he kind of touched on it today. So I just think sometimes it's hard to face reality, and like they were teaching us earlier about how churches are like a human life. You know, you're born and then you pass on. And our church is what, 117 years old? It's one of the older churches in Riverside. It's a very old church. We celebrated a huge 100th birthday quite a few years ago now. So I think Pastor Larry Kroger was that's how you said his name. He was here for that celebrations. But sometimes, and I think we're through with a lot of the grieving. I don't know about all of you, but I had a lot of tears 2 or 3 years ago. But it's kind of like now it's reality. So we need to really think about this.
Yeah, Tom, I wanted to just say a word about how I view this. And, you know, this isn't, ultimately, it's you that make the decisions. My view is that from the time I started filling in, doing pulpit supply, I'm here for however long is appropriate and needed. I'm not here with the expectation that you're going to do something for me. I've said this a number of times, and I'll say it again. Because of a good pension retirement program, I refer to myself as independently wealthy. I mean, that's a humorous term. But what that means, if you just boil it down, what that means is I'm going to be okay. I've got health benefits, I've got housing, I've got all the essential things. So whatever I do here, please don't think of that as part of the package or picture. The one concern I have, Tom, that I wanted to stress is as a pastor, what I've observed in the last basically 2 years, as opposed to just this last calendar year, is I'm very concerned about burnout. I'm concerned that we have a group of a dozen to 15, and maybe I'm forgetting somebody, 20 at the most, and everybody is wearing more than one hat. And, we can't, I'm just here. You have to decide about that. That's the big thing for me as I'm observing. I'm amazed that people can continue to wear multiple hats and do what they're doing. I'm amazed with this group of people for their durability, but I'm still concerned about what I would call burnout.
Yeah.
There's no more questions. I would imagine we'll need some time with the council to decide if you're going to make a proposal to the general membership and that we move one way or another, and then we would have to vote. Correct?
Yeah, that would be your best way so that everybody is on the same page, realizing that whenever you vote, there are really only 5 or 6 things by your constitution that say the congregation as a whole votes on. This not being one of them, but I encourage you to do it because everybody needs to, even if they're opposed to it, whoever ends up on one side of the vote or the other, You just need to realize the responsibilities and the accountability that you're making, whether you vote to do it or vote not to do it, if that makes sense. It's an important decision.
Jerry, you want to close? I'm going to turn this off.
Time for closing statement, or whatever they call it. I want to say something today. I want to thank everybody who's been so helpful to me in these few months that I have been president. They made it so easy. She came on as a non-voting member, and she helped me through it because I haven't been here that long. So, and I had to resign midterm because my 93-year-old sister is very close to death. So when death is imminent, my niece and nephews will call me and I'll go because I'll help them through that end of life. So, and I don't know how long I'll be gone. So that wasn't fair to the council to have to go on my terms. So thank you. Thank you all so much. It's been a blessing, and I plan to be a non-voting member too if I can be, just to help wherever I can. So, okay, Pastor, do you want to pray us out? Pastor?
Sure.
Jerry, I just want to say thank you for all of your hard work.
Oh,
Thank
thank you.
I'll stand over here. I'm still in the camera. Okay. The Lord be with you. Gracious and holy God, it is with humble hearts that we come to you today, giving you thanks and praise for this new day of creation that surrounds us. As we move through the afternoon and into the evening, as it begins to close in around us, we pray that your Holy Spirit will embrace us with a sense of comfort, a sense of strength, and a sense of hope for the new dawn that comes tomorrow. Grant safe travel to all who are here today, to and from, and throughout the week in their activities. May we be instruments of your will, may be a witness to your Savior Jesus, and may we share our faith with others when it's appropriate to do so. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.